According to Judith Herman, since most sexual abuse begins well before puberty, preventive education, if it is to have any effect at all, should begin early in grade school. Children are gifts from God. They are very special gifts, which is why they need all the protection that they can get. And what better way to do this than to get them and teach them to protect themselves? Which is why today we are talking about child sexual abuse and molestation. You are welcome to Chapters. And it is also my pleasure to welcome today's very special guest who wrote a book that I think is important for, truly speaking, everyone all around the world. My guest is Pastor Nomthi Odukoya, the co-pastor of the Fountain of Life Church, and she's also the author of the small but mighty and very colorful, lovely book, No, Don't Touch Me There. Pastor Nomthi, I got it. Thank you. For those wondering why I said I got it, so Pastor Nomthi's name is a TH. So don't, if you know her, don't say Pastor Nomthi, because that's the Nigerian way to pronounce it. Yeah. So the South African way, because she's South African, is Nomthi.
Yes, it is.
Thank you for being my lovely guest on Chapters today.
Thank you for having me.
You look amazing.
Okay. Thank you.
You look amazing. Now, I came across this book some time ago, and you know, when I saw it, I was like, interesting. First, because it's a topic that is almost a taboo, so to speak, to talk about. And for a lot of us growing up, at least in this generation, you couldn't even ask your parents about your private parts. Yeah. They could tell you it was an orange, or children are, like my director said, he told his son, children come from ShopRite. And his son was saying, where do I buy, where do children come from? And people are afraid to talk about sexual issues with children. But you wrote a book that is telling us to actually educate children from a very young age about sexual issues. Before we go into the book, what inspired you to even write this book?
It all started when a lady, one of the ladies in church, who was sexually abused as a young girl by her uncle. She had gone to a kitty state to speak to a group of young girls. And after she spoke to them, they wrote notes down asking her questions. You know how it goes after a seminar, you ask questions. But they were not bold enough to ask her, so they wrote them down in the pieces of paper. And she was overwhelmed. She brought them to my office. I had not thought anything about this. I was like, what am I going to do? So I took it to the church to talk to the women about it. And after we all spoke, and many other women came out to say they were sexually abused as children. And then I just said, let's pray about this and ask God what we need to do. Because I thought we needed to do something. It wasn't enough just to talk about it. There had to be something to be done.
Exactly.
I actually went back and prayed. And God just showed me how it starts. It starts from a young age, like you've already said. And children, it takes them unawares. Nobody tells them about it. And when it happens, they can't talk about it to others. So God told me to write a book to create an awareness to the children. It sounded like a silly idea.
I'm sure that's indeed.
If I may add, I mean, I had to pray again because to be sure,
right.
I was like, no, they don't know. I actually went on the internet. Let me check in Nigeria who has written a book like that.
And
well,
sure
I couldn't. Yeah, I didn't find anything. I was like, would I be the first one to do that? No, it looks silly. And I prayed again, thinking God would want me to mobilize women, so we'd go out on the streets. You know, I'm South African. We grew up in that kind of environment.
Yes.
If we're against something, you take to the streets. You know, with the placards and everything. But God obviously had spoken, and I had to take it up from there. And this is the results of it.
Thank you for speaking. And, you know, what I loved again was actually the way that you wrote the book. So you didn't write it as, you know, like a prose and everything. When you got the idea to write the book, were you specific about the fact they're writing to the parents or to the children?
To the children, because when from our discussion, I realized that every person who had this experience had not heard about it as a child. Well, nowadays I'll speak to parents as well, but my main focus was the children. If parents can't talk about it, let the children learn about it themselves. So that they know how to protect themselves. I thought that would be a powerful weapon to fight for themselves.
And I love the way it is written. So it's an absolutely colorful book.
Yeah, to attract them.
To attract the children.
Yeah.
Simple, small book, small but mighty. Yeah. Now, in a society where, like I said, it seems like, in fact, once you even try to ask the question as a child, they almost look at you like, oh my God, where did you hear that from? What was the reception?
It was amazing because, like I said, I thought it was a silly idea, but I went ahead with it. My staff and I started working on it. And one lady walked into my office and said, wow, you're working on such a beautiful book. When are you going to launch it? I was like, launch? I didn't think.
You didn't think you're going to launch it?
Yeah, I didn't even think. I was just like, because when I finally agreed that I'll write the book, I said, Lord, okay, I'll just write this book. Maybe you have 5 children out there who will read this book and it would save their lives. Okay, I will go ahead. So I'm sure I was just going, in my head, I was going to look for those 5 children and give this book to read. But the lady suggested they launch. We invited a few schools. They came over, and it was amazing. People shared their testimonies because it's always best to share the testimonies, to tell the children that this happened to us. And because we didn't know what to do, it affected us. You don't have to go through the same issue. Not only that, well, because my husband was there for the launch, he felt that we needed to take it to church. So on that Sunday, there was no preaching. This is what we talked about. We had 2 people share their testimonies. Fantastic. And I spoke about the book. And Pastor just randomly said, if you went through this experience as a child, come out. I could not believe it when I saw the sea of people coming down to the altar, crying, wailing. Many of them, like 99% of them, said they had not told anybody about it. So that was a confirmation for me that this book was needed by many more children out there, not just 5.
Wow. So let's talk about this issue of sexual molestation. Actually, it's always been there. I think it's just now that people are beginning to talk about it. And it's usually always seems like it's the men, but I'm sure that there's also some on the side of the women. And the question is not even why it's rampant, it's just that there's evil in the world.
Yes.
But what is the first step to do as a parent in actually educating your child on issues around sexual abuse and molestation?
It doesn't really just start from teaching them about sexual abuse. It starts from a parent creating time with their children, creating that loving and trusting atmosphere. Exactly. You know how it is nowadays. We are so engrossed in our smartphones. We have so much. In fact, it reminds me, there's a book which says, "No, not now, Bernard." It's a children's book. Not now, Bernard. A child is trying to cry to his dad or his mom. Oh, this is like, not now, Bernard. The dad is reading a newspaper. Mom, Dad, not now, Bernard. And the last day it would happen, there was a monster. Well, according to the book, there was a monster, and the child still cried out. The dad still said, not now, Bernard, and the monster ate up the child. So there are monsters every day. That's why we need to talk to our children every day, find out how was your day, who are your friends, you know, those are the little things. Then from there, if the child has that trust relationship with you, you can move on to talking about deeper issues. Talk about, like, you know, head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yes.
We already know that. And we're happy when the child gets to know, oh, eyes, nose, I mean, I went through that. You went through that. Many other adults can testify to that. Moving on from basic parts to a private part. You now go to a private part. Well, I didn't find it easy because before I wrote the book, I said, let me even try and see how it is with my children. I was tongue-tied. I was like, you see, I just couldn't say it. But then when the book was there, I was bold. We read the book together, and I was bold to discuss about it. So it's a conversation starter. The book really doesn't have everything. It depends on the child's age. So trust, first of all, create that trusting environment and atmosphere and start talking about it. You have a private part, you're a girl, this is what your private part is called. I didn't write this here because some parents prefer,
Okay, in terms of name calling now, that's also a very interesting thing, because people use all sorts of names so as not to use the real name. What do you advise?
Yes, name it.
Name it. So your
vagina is a vagina, a penis is a penis. Yeah. I mean, I didn't write it on the book because some parents don't want to do it. I don't want to offend people, but it's on every parent's discretion. They need to decide. They know their child's level of understanding, so it doesn't disturb anything. Vagina, it's not a vulgar language.
It's a body part.
Yeah, it's a body part.
The hand and
your
the
knee
toe
is
and
there. Yeah.
It's a penis. It's a vagina, it is breasts.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to go on a break now, but when we come back, I want us to just go and really just talk about how we can begin to tackle this issue as a society. We have to go on a short break now. When we come back, still talking about the book, No, Don't Touch Me There. We'll be right back. You are welcome back to Chapters, and on today's episode we are talking about sexual education for our children, and my guest is Pastor Nomthi Odukoya, the co-pastor of the Fountain of Life Church. Thank you, Pastor Nomthi.
You're welcome.
So right now I want us to really talk about how to educate our children, and the first question is really, what age or what stage should sexual education begin in the lives of our children? So something maybe 2 years old, 3 years old, 10 years old. What would you advise?
I would say it depends on the development of a child. Each parent knows their child's development. Once they start to understand about feelings, emotions, when they're happy, when they're sad, that's when they can start talking about things that make them happy, things that make them sad, and how to say no if something makes you sad, and how to tell your mom if something is making you sad. That simple language. Be careful how people touch you in the language that the child can understand. So there's no age really, because children grow in different ways. Yeah.
Okay, then does personality come into question? Because there's some people who say my child is naturally quiet. So maybe if somebody came and touched the child wouldn't speak. So is there a place that personality plays also in children speaking out?
Well, I think at that stage, it's up to a parent, even though a child may have a different personality from the other, but it still depends on the parent. You are the one molding the child at that point. If you keep telling, because you have to keep doing it consistently, at least once a week. You have to keep talking about it. In fact, I met one lady. She said each time her daughter goes to play outside, she says, "Remember, no, don't touch me there." I was like, yeah, that's good. Because that's how we keep information, by hearing it over and over again. So don't just think that I've spoken about it. I spoke about it when my child was 3. Now my child is fine. No, throughout every other week. Continually speak about it. That's what I do, and I advise every parent to keep talking about it. So it doesn't matter the personality of the child. Once the child keeps hearing that every day, the child will be able to tell you.
Keep talking about it.
Keep talking about
but
it.
In these days where, so one of the things you had said, I think, was creating an atmosphere of trust and communication in the home. Now, in these days where parents seem to be very busy, because a lot of times what happens is, so you leave the child maybe with the nanny, then the plumber comes home, then it's the driver that goes to pick the child, they're in the car together. How can we create environments where these kinds of things can be prevented in the midst of today's kind of society?
It's so hard to really say how that one would work, but I would suggest, if you have those staff members, talk to them as well. Let them be the ones to also talk to them in front of the children. Everybody should be a family thing, so that the children know that we are all nobody. You would include yourself. Not even your mom is supposed to do that. Not your dad, not your pastor. It doesn't matter how much you trust the person. Your body belongs to you. Nobody is supposed to touch it. Not the driver, not the auntie. And if they say do not tell, that's when you should tell. Nobody should ever tell you not to tell. You don't keep secrets. I mean, we say it in the book.
Don't keep secrets.
We say it in the book. We don't keep secrets. Well, there are good secrets, like a birthday surprise birthday party.
Okay.
You also
Yes.
need to explain that so that they don't go spoiling people's surprise.
They said no secrets. Mommy, let me tell you, we are planning your birthday.
Because as you're explaining the touches as well, you also explain that there are good touches. Like
exactly.
Like when your mom gives you a hug, your dad gives you a hug, that's a good touch. If your friend gives you a high five, that's a good touch, you know. But a bad touch would always make you feel uncomfortable. Once you feel uncomfortable, then you need to talk. It doesn't matter who the person is. So I would say in that kind of environment, really speak to everybody in the home. Let everybody hear about this. If you don't teach your children how to protect themselves, they are open to all sorts of things.
Now, in cases where it is the parents, and there are many cases like that, so it is the father touching either the son or the daughter, or it's the mother touching the son, and it starts from, because you've already created a loving, trusting environment, so you just think, this is my father, this is my mother. I don't know, how should those cases be handled, or how would you even advise children in those cases? Because it can start from, like you said, the good touch, leading to the bad touch, and you might not even be aware.
Yeah, I always teach children to talk to a trusted adult. Either once you're uncomfortable, it doesn't matter who the person is, like I said earlier. Whether it is, when I'm teaching the children, I tell them, even if it's me, what would you do if I was the one, I'm the one teaching you, what if I was the one now to touch you? Would you allow me to touch you? And they understand, no. Would you allow your mom to touch you inappropriately? No. Would you? So at the same time, you kind of balance it so they're not paranoid, because it can escalate, it can be, you know, we can take things to an extreme. But you just lovingly tell them, no, it doesn't matter who you can still love the person and still say no to them if you feel uncomfortable. Remember, it's your body. Like I said, continually, keep repeating those things. And if it is your mom or your dad, tell somebody else you trust. You have a teacher in school, you have a Sunday school teacher, you have your pastor, you have a trusted aunt. And I always say, if the first adult you tell does not believe you, keep telling until you find somebody who will believe you.
Sometimes nobody just believes, and the child is there.
So you prepare the children for the worst, because some adults say, shh, shh. Don't tell anybody. Keep telling until somebody believes you. There will be one adult out there who would believe you. It doesn't matter who does it, but somebody will eventually believe you.
So go to school, tell your trusted teacher, in your church, tell somebody, anywhere in your environment, find someone to tell.
Somebody to tell.
But the fear in telling as well sometimes might also be that, especially for the older children, not the feedback, what then might happen. So it's like a secret of the family.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yes. Yeah. So and then you now want to expose the secret of the family to people. Yeah. So how would you...
That part is really for parents. That's when we need to talk to parents about it. Because all the child should do is report. The child shouldn't think about what's going to happen after that. Like I said, if there's a trusted adult in that group, in her circle or his circle, the trusted adult should know what to do. So that's when the teaching of parents come in. If parents know what to do in such situations, they would know, they would take action. They would know. Nowadays we teach parents as well. Don't think you're trying to save your marriage at the expense of your child. Because what type of marriage do you want your child to have in the future? We always say our children will be better than us. Are you really putting that into practice? Are you doing that in your house? So if you want your children to have a better future than you need to sacrifice it. You need to sacrifice your joy for their joy. Because
that's actually destroying someone's life.
Yes.
And condoning because
actually, it's not even sacrificing your joy. It's giving yourself
freedom. Yes. Because you're really not joyful except there's something wrong with you.
Yes, you can't be joyful when your child is suffering. No parent will be joyful when their child is suffering.
What are the strangest cases of, sexual molestation that maybe you've come across in your counseling?
I think it's also about adults, like I said. This lady said her uncle would always come to their house. A trusted uncle, like we all know, it's always trusted somebody. The uncle would always come, and her mom would always send her to the uncle.
And she was not aware.
She was not aware, but she would protest. And the mom did not know. Those are the things we need to teach parents, that when a child is protesting,
so the
child is not comfortable with
for.
if a child is not comfortable with a certain individual, then find out what it is. So each time this uncle would come around, the mom would send. I don't know why the uncle would always be in a secluded area, so that the child would be sent.
Maybe go to his room to do something, go to this to do something.
Yeah, and obviously, he told her not to say anything.
Wow.
And years after, she got married, and she was obviously afraid that this thing might happen to her daughter. She was not even aware that it could happen to her son. So she so protected her daughter. She said she slept on the same bed with her daughter throughout her early years. And she was so shocked to hear that the boys can also...
So it happened to her son?
Yeah, it didn't happen, but she was shocked. Like, I hope it didn't happen, because I wasn't protecting my son.
Yes, because she was focused on the daughter.
Yes. Yeah. Another thing I just want to quickly say, sometimes there's another one, not the one I'm talking about. She had gone through it, and she was always afraid. It ended up happening to her daughter. You know, the Bible says, that which I feared the most happened to me. So it doesn't matter that it has happened to you. You should not be afraid. Trust God to take it. You do your part and believe that God will do his part, and he will. So that fear might also attract that thing to your children. So don't be afraid. It happened to you. You are teaching your children. It's not going to happen to you. So what happened to this lady? She protected her daughter, but she didn't know that her husband was sleeping with every maid who ever came to work in the house, including her own sister.
Wow.
And obviously the story goes that the parents, her mom did not believe it. Thankfully she believed it, but her mom did not believe it. Of course, the son-in-law was loaded. He provided for the family.
For the family.
So the mother would not want to hear, even if she hears. Met an elderly lady. She was so happy that I wrote this book. I was like, I'm glad they're getting it as well. She said, oh, well done for writing that book. Don't touch. I like how she said, she said, don't touch. I was like, yeah, it's good, because the grandmas, sometimes it's them who are taking care of the children. So they too need to know how to do it. That is so true. Because this thrives in secrecy, it thrives in silence, it thrives in blame, whatever, judgment and everything. Now, the most important thing is to tell a child, if it has happened, to tell a child that it's not your fault. Because most times perpetrators make it look like the child wanted it. Yes. So this lady I'm talking about, she only got free like 2 years ago when we started talking, when I told her it wasn't your fault. That just small line, that was not your fault. And that it freed her. She said yes. Because all the while she felt it was her fault that her uncle molested her. It was her fault that her husband molested her sister. Everything was her fault. She felt like she should have been more aware of it. You know, why was she not? She was just killing herself for nothing. It is not a child's fault. It's not anybody's fault but the perpetrators. And sometimes, having said that, sometimes the perpetrators would have gone through the same issue. Which is why
they are doing it as well. So sometimes we are products of the things that we went through that we didn't like. Yes. But we find ourselves doing the exact same thing.
Yes, yes. And if you don't talk about it, don't tell anybody about it, then it will come out. You would want to do it again. Maybe because of the pain. I don't know what causes them to do it, but I don't know what makes them do it.
Maybe it's just sometimes what you've seen growing up. It's the same way you can grow up in a home where your father is beating your mother. And you were angry with him. But then you get married and you start beating your wife.
That's what was modeled to you, even though you know it's bad.
It's bad, but you just can't help doing it.
Which is why it's good for people to talk about these things. There's no shame. I always say, It's the devil who needs to be ashamed and with the perpetrator. Not you. Not you. You don't need to be ashamed. Shame him by talking.
And we have to go on a break now, but when we come back, I want us to now see, for people that have gone through it, their parents who are dealing with, how do I help my child? So they found out, how do I help my child go through this? And their parents or adults who have gone through this, and truly speaking, it's almost destroyed their lives. So how you then recover from that and still grow up a whole person, spirit, soul, and body. But we have to go on a short break now. So we'll be right back talking about this very important subject. Don't go anywhere. Now, welcome back to Chapters, and today we're talking about how to prevent sexual molestation and abuse in the lives of our children, still with Pastor Nomthi Odukoya. So I know that the conversation seems to be so down and everything, but let's go on a lighter note. But before then, let's talk about solutions, because like I said, for people who might have this, so they're watching and they're like, look, this has already happened to me, happened to my child, they've struggled with it in silence, they've gone through that whole phase of fear, of shame. How do we then begin to find a way out?
The best way out, as I've heard from many who went through it, is to talk about it. Find a counselor, some go to psychologists, whichever works for you, because people heal differently. So whoever you feel comfortable with, talk about it, and the person, believing that the person would know what to do and what to say to you. And there are also self-help books one can read, and on the internet there are some groups of people, because when I was doing my research, there are some support groups of people who have gone through similar, because if you talk to somebody who has gone through something you've gone through, you feel better. You're like, oh yes,
now you're not
and this
the
is
only
how
one in the world.
Yes, so this is how it happened. And so, because sometimes some say they would think that they've healed, and one thing would happen which would just trigger the pain. So if you feel that the pain has been triggered, you go talk to a person who understands. They say, yeah, that's what happened to me as well. That way, and like they say, healing is a journey. It's not an event. So gradually you will get there. And what I've also noticed is when people talk to others about it, when they become advocates, so to say. I mean, for my own is mostly prevention. Because prevention is better than cure. Because it's harder.
It's much harder.
To work on adults, you know, who have deep-seated emotional
the thing has been there.
wounds. So it helps when they talk to, I mean, I know a few who have taken it upon themselves to talk to young adults and talk to the people who have been through this molestation. So that's how they also heal. You know, when you help somebody, it's therapeutic.
It's also,
you will get to get healed as well. The more you talk about it, the better you feel about it, and you demystify it. Really, you understand
that it's not such a big mountain as it seems.
And you understand it's not the end of the world.
The words out of my mouth.
It's not the end of your life.
Your life continues, and it can flourish.
Yes. And surround yourself with people who would allow you to express yourself, because sometimes people can shut the person down and say, oh, that happened 20 years ago, why are you bringing it up now? You know, people are different.
So true.
Some people can they can experience something and they can forget about it.
For some it's stews and boils. I agree. That's such a powerful point. I think it's also to tell people to be more compassionate. Because sometimes it might seem like, okay, so that happened 50 years ago, why are you still going on about it? And you don't understand the depth of what it did to the other person. So we ourselves need to be more compassionate as human beings.
Yes, especially if a person never got a chance to talk about it as a child. Because some people actually, I don't know how it happens, psychologists would understand it. Because some people can actually forget about it altogether. They shut down. And maybe when they are 30 years old, I've read stories like that. When something triggers
and the memory just comes back.
So that person is now 5 years old if it happened when they were 5 years old.
Wow.
So you have to allow, if you're around that person, allow the person, encourage them to, you know, to enjoy their lives, like I would say. But at the same time, understand where they're coming from. You are dealing with this, a 5-year-old emotions at that time. Allow them to be 5 years old when they talk about what they went through. So support is very important. And for the person themselves to talk about it and support others as well.
But the most important message is there is hope.
Yeah, there's hope. There's hope.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, we have seen many people who have thrived
and
after.
bounced back from that.
They call themselves victors, not victims.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
You just reminded me of a quote that says, "Life is not really about what happens to you, but how you respond to what happens to you."
That's true.
And so, truly speaking, it's in your control.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems as if you gave your control to somebody else to use you anyhow and to abuse you. But at the end of the day, the control belongs to you. It might be hard to see at the time, but with time, like you said, healing is a process. It's a journey. With time, you will see that you are yours, and it happened, but it doesn't change who you are. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For coming as guest, for writing this book, and for
thank
giving
you.
everyone a platform to have this conversation. Like you said, even for you, it's easier to teach your children about sexual education with this book. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So for anyone that is struggling with, how do I tell my children about body parts or sexuality, this is a solution. We have to create a society where our children are protected from any ill, especially concerning sexuality, because it's something that destroys spirit, soul, and body. And so we need to create a healthy, safe environment. And if you're a parent watching this today and you feel that your child has gone through any form of sexual molestation and you're wondering how to handle it, you're an adult who is, you've gone through this, please talk about it. Do not be ashamed. Do not hold it in. When you release it, you realize that you will find freedom. And there's several support groups out there that would take this and will not make you feel funny because you've been through it. I want to thank you all for watching, but also remember that it's not about what you know, but what you do with what you know. Until the next episode, God bless you.